Welcome. It's great to imagine you out there. This is Jonathan Foust. I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for being here. As a little introduction to what's going to follow, this is kind of an encore meditation and an encore talk. I'm in California this week, helping to deliver a week-long program. Before we launch, big thank you to our producers, to Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo. A big thank you to our mindful movement teacher and to mindful dialogue leaders. The whole Monday night experience, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, mindful movement for 55 minutes or something like that. That takes you to 7:30 for the meditation with me, 8 o'clock for the talk, and then afterward you can join Ray Manioki and Tara Cassidy for mindful dialogue. If you'd like to connect with other people, share about your practice, share about the talk, all that good stuff. All those links are on my website and on my Facebook page. Please feel free to avail yourself if you are called. A couple other things. Thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this talk, to my friends at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Arlington, which has been the physical home of Monday Night Meditation for many years, or now online. And I have a mailing list you can sign up for, a monthly mailing list, a summary of the talks, my best photography from the month. Please feel free to avail yourself of that. And all this is offered freely. Just a reminder that this is all done in the spirit that we really want no one to be denied access to these practices and these teachings. So it's offered without charge. And if you feel inspired, thank you so much for your support. What follows is a guided meditation, which I think you will enjoy. Maybe you won't. Enjoy. In this practice, you'll be exploring focus or concentration as a way of gathering attention. You'll explore sensitizing yourself to flow as a way of cultivating your capacity to observe without judgment. Toward the end of this meditation, you'll explore letting go, investigating a quality of spacious awareness. I find this practice to be helpful for bringing me into both a sense of balance and the quality of spacious allowing. As you're ready, you might now begin to deepen and lengthen your breath. You may find it helpful to count the length of the inhalation, exhaling fully now, and breathing in slowly to the count of 4. Exhale to the count of 4. And inhale to the count of 4. Exhale to the count of 4. And continue on your own, matching the length of the inhalation with the length of the exhalation. And let all of your attention focus on the movement of the breath inside. When you naturally notice the mind wandering, bring it back to the task at hand, matching the length of the in-breath with the length of the out-breath. On the next exhalation, relax control of the breath, and at the same time, sense if you can retain this sense of deep, intimate connection with the breath. The breath is effortless and free-flowing, and you might draw your attention to the breath at the nostrils, either at the rim of the nostrils or at the septum. And notice if you can retain this sense of intimate connection and focus on the breath. refreshing your attention onto breath, notice if you can at the same time relax just a little bit. Relax the muscles of the face. Could you relax your tongue in a way that it fills your lower jaw? Could you soften your belly and lower back and buttocks? Could you soften and feel the palms, the soles of the feet? Deeply relaxed and at the same time alert. Focus or concentration is a dynamic way of gathering your attention. And you may find a quality arising in your practice as you both relax and focus, a quality of the observer or the witness. Your capacity to observe everything that is happening without judgment. And you may sense a quality of background and foreground. You are feeling the breath in the foreground, and in the background, a heightened sense of flow, or the stream of everything that is changing. And you might, if it feels right for you, relax or soften your grip on the breath and explore this quality of open monitoring. Noticing everything that is moving and shifting and changing in your experience. From time to time, it may be helpful to refresh your sense of the breath, but then allow yourself to widen and broaden your attention to this perception of flow or the stream. From time to time, you might explore these two questions. What is my experience right now? Can I let it be? From time to time, it can be helpful to refresh the practice. Draw your attention back to the breath and feel how intimately you can sense the breath. And as you wish, let your attention broaden and widen, and again, take the seat of the witness, the one who is aware, noting how intimately you can sense what is changing in your experience. Focus is a gathering of your attention. Flow helps you assume the seat of the witness, your capacity to observe without judgment. And you might explore now this quality of flow, or letting go, releasing all technique. Again, relax the tongue, let it fill the lower jaw. Could you soften the belly? Could you relax and soften the palms and the soles of the feet? Exploring a quality of effortless awareness. What could relax or soften or let go right now? What could relax or soften or let go even more than that? Relax and at the same time alert. Resting in presence. Spacious and allowing. What is your experience right now? Can you let this be? Taking in a long, slow, deep inhalation. Fully relax on the out-breath. How intimately can you feel the breath on the inside right now? And sensing this quality of non-judging awareness, the quality of presence right now. Sensing what has shifted in this meditation. You might, with your eyes closed, let your head drift a little bit from side to side. Sense the movement from the inside and let awareness spread through the body. Let your body respond and move in any way that feels most pleasurable to you. Sensing this level of rest. And reflecting on what calls your attention as you move back into activity. As you're ready, you can deepen your breath and let your eyes open. A few words about this talk. This talk is entitled How to Work with Feeling in Your Meditation Practice. When you pay attention to your experience, there is a feeling tone that's always shifting and changing. It moves from pleasant to unpleasant to neutral sensations, and then of course you react out of that, and out of that reaction you create your world. So we're going to talk here about why the body is so instrumental in liberation practices, and what you can learn by deepening your attention to this feeling tone. We'll explore kind of the three primary anchors and the kinds of energetic experiences that arise when you move into this amazing practice of relaxation and paying attention. Enjoy the following talk, How to Work with Feeling in Your Meditation Practice, and I might add, in life. So I moved into a yoga ashram when I was 25 and jumped right into these wild yogic practices. And one of the big realizations was that until age 25, I thought the only reason I had a body was to make my head portable. It wasn't until later that I realized that the body is the doorway to awakening. Should we maybe bring the sound down a little bit? I think there's a little bit of echo. Sound okay? We have this real mechanistic view of the body, through Western science. And yet all these techniques of yoga and meditation and Tai Chi and Qigong and all these mind-body techniques are about using the body as a spiritual tool. And a lot of people have been writing me recently saying, what do I do when I experience weird sensations in my body when I meditate and when I practice? I'd like to talk about that a little bit tonight. A little bit about why the body is considered the foundation of spiritual practice, particularly in this tradition. And how you can use the anchors in a very alive and real way. We're going to review the anchors and the practice of the anchors. And the different ways you can experience energy in the body and how to work with them, ranging from the the blissful sensations to the really unpleasant sensations to the downright weird sensations that occur. And then if we have time to talk into some of the non-traditional techniques that use different techniques for accessing body awareness, particularly moving from the gross body into what's called the subtle body. Initially, I was trained in transcendental meditation when I was 15, and it was quite a powerful experience for me. And I practiced that technique for about 15 years, very intensively. And I went to rigorous trainings and so forth. And they always gave this example of the mind, and it just flashed on it as I was thinking about this topic. And where they say, imagine you're driving down the road listening to your favorite music. And then you're thinking, what would be better than this? If I was driving a Corvette. So then you imagine you're driving down the Corvette listening to really good music. And then you're thinking, what would be better than this? If I was driving this Corvette and listening to the radio with someone who's really, really attractive in the passenger seat. What would be even better than that? Would be if I was driving this Corvette down the highway, listening to the radio with someone really attractive in this seat who was really attracted to me. And what would be even better than that? Would be two people in the car with me. And then it goes on and on and on. And this is really the nature of the mind. The mind wants more. The mind basically wants more in ever-increasing quantities forever and ever and ever. And when we begin to recognize that this is the nature of the mind, it just wants, we get a pretty big insight into the nature of the mind and how we can work with the mind. Desire puts everything in motion. The whole wheel of life begins with desire. So then different traditions have different ways of working with desire. And there are a lot of traditions that say, hey, well, if desire kicks off the entire mechanism, well, let's kill desire. Let's just knock it out of there. And so we have different models that show up in all different cultures and all these different permutations. The flesh is weak, it needs to be overcome. So denying the body, denying pleasure. In the yogic tradition that I lived in for a couple decades, there was a sense that energy, this life force, it's like riding an elevator. So keep moving it up and in, don't let it out. So, the practice of celibacy was a really important part of the practice. Like, keep riding the elevator up, up, up. The whole idea that the halo around a saint's head is sexual energy fully transformed. That's that model. So don't go there. It's bad. And someone said I grew up in North Texas, where I found out that sex is the most vile, disgusting thing in the world. So you should save it for someone you really love. So everywhere you look, you see these different traditions have different approaches. Catholic priests, nuns, and monks and renunciates don't enter into the world because it's full of desire that's going to pull you away from what's most important. So don't go there. And again, as I mentioned before, I practiced celibacy for almost 7 years as part of being in this community in my 20s and 30s, which was quite the challenge. And there's something very powerful about the practice of restraint. I certainly found in my own practice of celibacy in my 20s and 30s, it shone a very, very intense mirror on myself, because I could see all my conditioning around relationship. Oh, if I say this and they say that, maybe it means this, and all the internal posturing. And then recognizing that all these people I would have pursued, but I never would have had the emotional maturity to maintain a relationship. Seeing that was so liberating. So I'm very grateful for that practice of restraint. And I'm very grateful it's over. And so in the Buddha's time, he engaged in these practices of deep restraint. When he began his spiritual path, like in many paths, first there's the teaching of if it's pleasurable, it's probably bad for you. So this intensive restraint. And in that practice, the recognition that restraining from pleasure and restraining from sensuality can provide very powerful insights, but not liberating insights. And so this cultivated this teaching of the middle way, of not too tight, not too loose. And where the Buddha said, if you think that you can achieve awakening by indulging the senses, you may be mistaken. But if you think you can gain your awakening by denying the senses, you may find you're equally mistaken. So we have to cultivate this middle way of not too tight, not too loose. So when you're practicing self-observation without judgment, the primary place where you're paying attention is this energetic field of the body. And you begin to recognize over time that there are different qualities arise from self-observation of the body. The first thing you begin to recognize is that you are truly a being of energy. This life force, the chi, the ki, the Holy Spirit, prana, whatever you call it, it animates your body. It's the difference between your body and a corpse, is this life force. And so you notice all the particles and waves of energy that animate your body. But then you begin to notice that energy experience, without you realizing it, will very quickly get categorized into one of three qualities. It's referred to as Vedana in the Pali tradition. And that is all the sensations that are unpleasant, all the sensations that are pleasant, and all the sensations that are in between, neutral. And your entire life is reacting to unpleasant, pleasant, and neutral. Your entire life. So then this becomes a really powerful part of your practice, is first of all noticing what's happening as it's happening, but noticing, secondly, your relationship to what is happening. I've mentioned before a wonderful teacher by the name of U Tejaniya. And when you do a retreat with him, you're not told how long to sit. You're not told what technique to do. But what you do for your practice 24/7 is to notice the play of unpleasant, pleasant, and neutral, and how you respond to it. And when your mind gets very, very subtle, you can begin to see. And how I experience, it's like this little meter. Something arises, oh, I don't like that. Something arises, oh, I do like this. And it just jumps around all the time. Someone walks into a room with someone you like, that expansive feeling. You turn the corner, there's someone you don't like, the clenching. So you begin to see that in your experience of Vedana, of your usually unconscious response to the energetic experience of here and now, you begin to see into your patterning and all of your conditioning. You get to see your aversions, your attractions, the stuff you grasp for, the stuff you push away, the stuff that bores you. And as you continue to pay attention to this arising, you also begin to notice all the different thought forms that arise out of your experience. Something arises, it's unpleasant, you create a story, because that story reminds you of something else, and that reminds you of something else, and you've developed a whole narrative on a very, very simple sensation. I remember once meditating, there was a farm, And there were some sheep in a distant field, and I grew up on a sheep farm. And I just heard this one little sheep. And I had this full memory of the pleasant sensations and the memories. And 45 minutes later, I realized I was meditating. I was completely lost in that story. So these 4 foundations of awareness become very integral to your practice. The direct experience of energy, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, and then being aware of the thought forms that arise out of your experience. And then just to mention the 4th foundation, which in some ways is more subtle, but as you're practicing self-observation without judgment, you then begin to notice that certain thoughts fall into certain categories. You begin to notice all the thoughts that are tied into aversion, the stuff you don't like. All the thoughts that are tied into and associated to planning and fantasy. All the thoughts that are tied into restlessness and worry and anxiety. All the thoughts that are about doubt and fear. You become more and more aware of the whole world that arises out of the energetic experience of here and now. So this fourth foundation is referred to as the Dhammas. And here we have all the lists, the 5 hindrances, the 4 noble truths, the 3 characteristics of reality. All of this are kind of the liberating factors that come out of the body. So when people say the meditation is about being aware of the breath, that's true. But it's so much more than that. It's about the recognition of who you are and what you build around this very simple experience of being alive right now and right here. Pema Chodron has this great story. And this is a great interview with Pema Chodron from way, way back when. Someone asked, well, what got you started meditating? And she said, that's easy. I hated my husband. We all have something that gets us going. But she told the story of how she was going for instructions, in meditation. And she was told, so what you want to do is relax and focus on your breathing. And when your mind wanders, bring it back to your breath. So the first set, the bell rang and she realized, I never once was aware of my breath. And as she went through the day, she was a little bit more aware of her breath and when it went away. So she went back to her teacher and said, okay, I think I've got that. I'm ready for the next level of instruction. And the teacher smiled and said, okay, so what you want to do is relax and notice your breath. And when your mind wanders, bring it back to the breath. That's the next level. Maybe you've noticed, as I have, that the practice can get very dry. That you sort of have your anchor and you're thinking, yes, I need to be aware of my breath, but you're not really experiencing your breath. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. Or you have the anchor of sound. There's a sound. But part of the practice is to really, you're moving from who you are as the thinker, the cognitive, to the actual raw experience of what's here and now. So I'd like to lead a little reflection on just to suggest what it means to really feel these anchors on the inside. So if you like, you can close your eyes. And as you draw your attention to your breathing right now, just notice where you feel the breath. I'd like to offer just a few suggestions. If you notice the breath in the belly, you may notice how there's a natural rising on the in-breath and a falling on the out-breath. But you may notice as well how the more you can soften your belly, the more intimately you can feel the subtlety of movement here. So for the next few rounds of breath, how much more could you soften and relax into this undefended belly? And as you sense the breath, can you imagine the shape of your lungs? And can you imagine or feel the upper lobes of the lungs that actually extend up behind your collarbones? And can you feel the movement of your lungs against the back of your rib cage? And if you guide your breath now to the nostrils, you might just first sense the movement of the breath against the septum. Quite often, this is where it's most profoundly felt. And is it possible, it may not be, is it possible to discern a temperature differential from the inhalation to the exhalation? Perhaps just a little bit cooler on the inhale, a little warmer on the exhale. Can you sense the breath at the very rim of the nostril? Can you isolate your attention there just for a few rounds of breath? And just a taste of an even subtler practice. Can you sense the movement of the breath outside your body, in particular on the upper lip, just below the nostrils? You might now shift your attention to the sounds. Sounds can be a very powerful anchor. And just take a moment to notice the sounds that are the closest in. And what are the sounds that are at the furthest edge of your capacity to hear? You may notice a distinction now, and that is listening to the mind. That's identifying the source of the sounds and their location. And is it possible now to move to just experience the direct sound vibration without a label? This is sometimes referred to as bare attention, listening without a past or a future, pure vibration. And now to explore a third anchor that can be quite common. And that is to bring your attention now into the palms and fingers and thumbs. And just imagine now you could let your attention just flood into the palms and fingers and thumbs. It can be helpful to soften and relax here. A sense of receiving. And now the inquiry. Is it possible to detect any sense of pulse or tingling or vibration or subtle energy? And just note anything that may have shifted over the last few minutes of really sensing how intimately you can feel at these 3 points. So if you like, you now deepen your breath. And if you like, you can remain with your eyes closed, or you can open your eyes. For me, it's so easy to kind of override this fundamental direction of the practice, which is the direct experience of here and now. This distinction between who I am as a cognitive being and who I am as this alive body. And when you move, anytime you move from the cognitive to the direct experience, you are truly re-arriving. And quite often in meditation, there's so much activity that it's very difficult to move into the subtlety of some of these practices. And I'll talk a little bit later about how to sometimes best prepare for that, to kind of work out the more deep-seated tension so you can get more and more subtle. But you might sense how what these practices quite often point toward are getting more and more absorbed into the here and now. And some pretty magical things can arise when you begin to get more and more here for longer and longer periods of time. Just the subtlety of breath becomes such a powerful, absorbing practice at times. So it is about the subtlety of experiencing here and now, calling your attention again and again back. But it's also about freedom and liberation. As the Buddha famously, allegedly said, everything you want to know about reality is found in this body. Everything you want to know is revealed by paying attention to this body. And so we're instructed to be aware of what's happening as it's happening. As you breathe in, to be aware of the in-breath. As you breathe out, to be aware of the out-breath. As you walk, to be aware of walking. As you eat, to be aware of eating. As you move, to be aware of moving. To notice the play of Vedana and notice your relationship to it can be tremendously, tremendously powerful. But there's a very interesting phenomenon that occurs because we are instructed to relax and pay attention and to keep relaxing and paying attention. You know, the big circle with the line through it, you know, above the line is what you're aware of, below the line is what you're not aware of. Relaxing and paying attention dramatically moves that line. And that's when things start to get funky in your practice because your body starts to unwind. Tensions start to unwind. And you begin to feel things you hadn't felt before. And that's a little bit of what I'd like to talk about with the little bit of time we have left. Or someone who was on a meditation retreat where they had some time to kind of deepen their practice, keep relaxing and keep paying attention. And he told me how as he was settling in, there was this unsettled feeling in his guts that just kept kind of coming up to the surface. And he had a lot of aversion toward it. And for a couple of days, he tried changing his diet and going for walks and drinking more water to see if he could kind of make it go away. But it kept returning. It just kept, this unsettled feeling in his intestines just kept returning. And I remember the practice of rain, to recognize what's there, to ask if you can allow it, and if you can, to investigate and be intimate with what's there, and then to nurture what you find with compassion and empathy. And so he thought after a couple of days, okay, after trying to make this thing go away, let me just see if I can be with it. And so he began to just make room for it. We talk a lot of this analogy of having tea with your demons. And so here was this demon, this energy that was arising. He thought, let me just make room for it. I'm not going to try to figure it out. I'm just going to see if I can be friendly with this. And then after some time of really being in the discomfort, kind of wanting to kind of run away, but staying with it, he had a very strong intention to really get to know this. Suddenly he had a very deep memory. When he was 6 years old, his twin brother was hit by a car and killed. And his family never talked about it. And this tremendous survivor's guilt that he had. And in that realization, he was able to, over time, continue to make room for it. And so many other feelings, of course, were released through that. Ultimately, he was able to get to a place of a very deep sense of tenderness toward himself. So how does that work? How does a memory from 6 years old, a traumatic memory like that, find its way to the surface, to be seen and felt and noticed? It's one of the most fascinating things about this practice. And again, as we say, when you meditate, you feel better. You feel your depression better, your anger better, your sadness better, also your joy and your kindness better. But there's so many experiences people experience in meditation where they're experiencing very strange sensations as they arise. And there are different ways to work with it. But one fundamental thing, this is maybe one of the best little instructions I ever got in my meditation practice. And it's from a teacher named Reggie Ray, who teaches a lot about somatic meditation. And it's the practice of what he calls meditating with the body. There are different ways that you can meditate with your body. You can focus on breath or sound or sensation. You can do the practice of what's called the aditan meditation, where you sit with the determination not to move. But this particular technique is about deeply listening to your body. And when your body wants to move, to make that part of your meditation. So part of the background to this is when you think about it, you think about 50,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are not unique. Or the ones you had yesterday. But every time you notice a thought and you're aware of their thought and you come back to the here and now, you're letting go of something. You're letting go of that story, just for a moment, sensing who you are without a story. or you're letting go of some identification and reinforcing who you are as the one who's aware of thinking. Back in my TM days, that was called de-stressing. So whenever you have a thought and you're aware of the thought and you let it go, you just release some stress. And I think that's essentially true. But how could you not let go of stress in the mind without letting go of something in the body? So it makes all the sense in the world that your body, just as your mind is beginning to gather and settle, your body is gathering and settling. So with this particular practice, it's pretty simple. But oftentimes what he recommends, and I'll just kind of guide you through this for a moment, it's just a quick little check-in. He often recommends, if you're sitting in a chair, to kind of bring your back a little bit forward, kind of away from the back of your chair, and your feet flat on the floor. And bring the palms of your hands to the tops of your thighs. And let your eyes close. And listen very, very intimately to the body. Feel how the breath breathes by itself. The sound vibrations are happening all by themselves. And pulse and tingling vibration is all happening by itself. And can you imagine this sense of receiving the moment in the body? And any time there's a signal from your body that it wants to move, and notice that and include that into your meditation. So there's no fighting or controlling, but a welcoming of sensation and aliveness and movement. And if you like, you can deepen your breath and you can open your eyes. Is that helpful in some way? I find that to be really, really powerful. Quite often I'm asked, well, what if I do if my nose itches? Can I scratch it? Is that legal? And in that same way, the one tradition would tell you, no way. Watch the sensations, be the observer, notice the unpleasant arise, and eventually it'll change. But stay the witness. What this tradition, or this approach would say, notice the unpleasant arise, and then make a decision that you're going to move. And then you can feel your hand coming up. And then you can scratch that itch and watch the unpleasant turn to pleasant. And feel your hand as it comes back down. And you've just made that an integral part of your practice, where you're really relating to the play of Vedana, of pleasant and unpleasant and neutral. But what happens in this practice is the tensions that you're holding inside, they start to unwind. They just start to flow. You're relaxing, you're paying attention. So things will start to move in your experience. Have you ever had the experience of your body swaying in meditation, spontaneously swaying in meditation? Either swaying from side to side or back and forth. It's a very natural phenomenon. In fact, if you've ever seen the davening, if you've ever seen like at the Wailing Wall, you'll see my sense of that is at one point that was a completely spontaneous movement, but that kind of got copied, and now it's more of a willful practice. So a lot of interesting sensations can arise, and just to kind of name some of them. And some of them are indicative of moving into a different brainwave state. Have you ever had the experience where your body feels very, very heavy? Or have you ever had the experience where your body felt like it was tilted? or felt very, very light, or maybe a sense that you're spinning a little bit. Quite often, this is an indicator that you're in a very, very deep, altered brainwave state. Just very, very quickly, the linear rational mind is the beta level of brainwaves. This is comparing, judging, planning, figuring things out. When you begin to become more aware of the body, where the senses begin to dominate, you're shifting into the alpha state. It's a state of relaxation. You're a little bit more aware of the field in which thoughts are arising. If you stay with it, sometimes you'll experience the brainwave state of theta, which is the brainwave state of sleep. And two things occur in the theta brainwaves, and that's spatial and temporal weirdness. Space and time get really, really distorted. Like when you wake up in the morning, oh, I'm back. And what time is it? You lost that sense of time and space. So sometimes in your practice, if you're feeling either a sense of really, really deep heaviness, or you'll get some kind of disorientation in terms of where you are in space, or a little floating feeling, some particular feeling like your tongue feels really, really wide, that's just a sign that you're in the theta state. It can feel very, very weird and disorienting, but it's also kind of cool. Sometimes a thick tongue can be a sign of being in the theta state. One thing just to name, and we have just a few minutes left. Just as this person on retreat kind of felt this unpleasantness, and as over time he was able to be with it, he recognized there was this deep early trauma in his experience. It's not uncommon in your practice for anything that's been undigested in your experience to arise. It's going to make its way up through the body. You're going to experience it as unusual, weird sensations. And here, this practice of rain is so important. To recognize what's there. And then the A is to inquire, can I allow it? And the question to ask is, does it feel okay to be with this? Does it feel safe to be with this? And if you have a sense that it doesn't, this is not about powering. This is not a practice of powering through. It's a practice of kindness and compassion. So the most strategic thing you can do is to let it know you see it, and let it know another time when the conditions are different. Your intention is to be with it, but to turn your attention away from that energetic phenomena and revisit it another time. If you do find that the things arise in your practice that are unusual or difficult, it can be very, very helpful to find someone who may have experienced this before. So if you do have challenges in your practice, which is kind of a sign that your practice is alive, just to say that IMCW does have a mentoring community, people you can connect with. My time is pretty limited, but if there's anything that occurs for you, if I can help you with any resources, please do let me know. This practice is such an interesting practice because on one level, it's so healing. There's such a sense of coming home. But at the same time, when you really, really want to be free, when you have a very sincere and deep intention to really increase your capacity for happiness and joy, what happens in this practice is that everything that isn't happiness and joy is going to start to arise in your practice. It's why in a community like this, it's one of the rare things where when you can be talking with someone and they'll say, how are you doing? You can say, I just feel kind of beaten up inside and just kind of hopeless, and my practice is really frustrating. And the other person will say, wow, that's great. Because there's this understanding that this is a practice, first, of balance, but it's also a practice of liberation, a practice of seeing more clearly and really learning what it means to live as fully as you can live. So thank you for letting me ramble here. I did want to say there's another piece I'd like to share sometime, and that is this distinction between the practices of allowing and the practices of doing. There's certain elements of this practice that are about using sort of manipulation and control to sort of facilitate shifts in consciousness. And then there are practices that are about letting be and allowing. So there are certain breathing techniques that you can explore. They'd be quite powerful for shifting your nervous system, and certain techniques that you can focus on different energy centers in the body. It's all really, really cool stuff, and I look forward to sharing more of that down the road. In the meantime, thank you for your time and attention. May you and your body have a wonderful evening together. If you have any questions about the year of living mindfully, there'll be kind of a collection up here. I'm happy to chat with you then. Have a wonderful night. Thank you again.